Hello there. It was not a very good slide, but it did get me here, so cheers to that. Now the Cold Brew Chronicles are continuing. They're continuing on in a very fun fashion because I have two brewers today that I'm very excited about, and we're gonna do kind of a compare and contrast situation. We're still going to rate both of these on our scale of 1 to 10. However, these do very similar things. They result in very similar products, and so I thought we should combine them today. You're getting 2 for 1. It's very exciting. And I suppose we don't really need to wait for anything. Let's just dive into the first brewer of the day. This very tall boy right here, it's the Cold Brew coffee maker, but it should be called a tower with how large it is. Now this brewer right here, as well as the other one we're gonna look at, doesn't make a straight to drink cold brew. The idea behind this is making a large batch of cold brew concentrate. That way you can dilute it out with water or milk to your taste. You have a larger batch of something that lasts for a lot longer. This brewer right here comes in at just over $50. Pretty reasonably priced, at least compared to what we looked at last week. Let's break down the components here. It's all pretty straightforward if you've ever used a cold brew system like this, or frankly even like a toddy system. Very, very similar. We have a couple different moving pieces here. Starting off with the maybe less exciting stuff, we have our base. We also have a carafe that's included. This is very easy to fit and slot right under for when you're ready to dose out your cold brew. It also has some nice indicators and markers on the side for when you're measuring out your water. And it also comes with this nice little stopper cap. When you drain out all of your concentrate, you can do that. You can store it in your fridge. Of note, the only component in this entire brewer that is glass is gonna be this carafe right here. Everything else is like a hard plastic material. There really aren't many moving pieces on this. You have like a switch. This is gonna drain out that cold brew when you're all done. It goes up and it goes down, and it doesn't really do much else. Now this right here is gonna be the main body of our brewer. If you take off the top here, you'll notice it has a wide variety of holes up here. Well, it's not really a wide variety. You just have a lot of them. This is called their rainfall head, and essentially you're gonna be pouring the water for your cold brew over the top here, and then it's gonna evenly disperse and saturate the grounds in maybe a more even manner if you were then to just like pour in the water straight on top of the grounds. Inside, you can see right there, it has a metal filter, which is pretty standard. It's a very, very, very fine mesh filter. But then, if you come over to this side, see if my little hands can do this. If you unscrew the base here, you also have a secondary paper filter. This brewing kit comes with a nice little pack of them. You have quite a few, so you're getting like a nice double filtration here. Very easy, unless you are a small-handed person like me, to unscrew the bottom, add the paper filter, and you're good to go. Now, because most of this is just plastic, a good deal of this is just safe to put in your dishwasher. Like, you can use soap and hot water, but a lot of this you can toss in the dishwasher and like call it good. And that reminds me, I actually didn't talk about the metrics we're gonna be used to be judging and comparing these cold brewers. We talked about them last week if you wanna watch that video, but let me go over them real fast here. The first metric we're gonna be looking at is, does it make a nice cup of coffee? Does it taste good? Does it have good texture? Is it a clean cup? Is it nice? The second thing we're gonna be looking at is kind of the usability of the actual device. Does it feel well built? Does it feel intentional? Is it enjoyable to use? Third, we're also gonna be looking at the price point. So this is $50. It has a little less, I would say, quality of build material. But that being said, everything fits together. It all feels very intentional. It all fits. So far, so good. This is brewer number 1. I feel very caffeinated. Can everyone tell that I'm a bit caffeinated? This right here, a slightly shorter boy, is gonna be brewer number 2. This is a brewer from KitchenAid, specifically for cold brew, and once more, cold brew concentrate. This is about double the price of the previous unit. This one sits at just under about $110 at MSRP. And already, I don't know if you saw it when I brought it on, but this has a lot more heft to it. This is a pretty substantial brewer right here. Pretty much every major component of this is either a thick-walled glass or also like a stainless steel. There's very little plastic in this. And for over $100, I would expect there to be very little plastic, so good so far. Now there's a little bit less to break down of this. It's a little bit more straightforward from just like a parts standpoint. You have your little lid right here. You have a removable brewing basket. Again, this is in the style of like a metal filter, so it's all metal, has very, very, very fine holes. So in theory, no grounds are getting in the cold brew, but you have nice extraction going. You have your little seal right here. And then that is really everything. The rest of this is one solid component that you are not supposed to break into. And of course, you have your little spout up front, which I think is a very nice touch. So that's the overview of both of these. One of these is 50, one of them is 100, but is there a noticeable difference once you get past the price point? Let's grab some coffee. Well, let's find out. I want to give a huge thank you to Trade Coffee for sponsoring today's video. Iced coffee and cold brew season is upon us, and I'm a firm believer that if you have a good input, it's more than likely that you'll have a good output. So we're using some delicious coffee as the base for all of our brews today. Trade Coffee is a coffee subscription service that makes it easy to discover new coffees and make your best cup at home every day. Trade partners with the nation's top-rated independent roasters to send you the best quality coffee you can get. And whether you know what you like or are new to specialty coffee, Trade has you covered. This month, Trade sent me a washed Ethiopian coffee from Bird Rock Roasters that I'm already halfway through. This coffee is the heirloom variety and has notes of lemon sugar cookies and white grape. It's floral, soft, and produces a great cup of iced coffee and cold brew. But again, if this particular profile isn't your cup of tea, pardon the pun, then you can explore the world of flavor that Trade offers with over 450 unique coffees to choose from. So if you're ready to get started right now, Trade is offering my subscribers a free bag of coffee with any subscription purchase at drinktrade.com/MDC. That's drinktrade.com/MDC for a free bag of coffee with any subscription purchase. Now, both of these brewers come with very, very similar recommended recipes. So for the sake of standardizing and making this as even as possible, we're gonna just cut the difference and use the same recipe for both of them. Cut the difference, I think it's split the difference. So for both of our recipes, we're gonna be going in with 250 grams of coarsely ground coffee. Ground for cold brew, it's pretty much as coarse as you can go. As for our water weight, we're gonna be going in with about 40 ounces, which equivalents out to, I think, about 1,200 milliliters of water. Again, we're brewing concentrates on both of these, so I have piles of coffee that we need to add. This is the amount of coffee we're adding. I feel like I need a shovel to drop this into here. Both of my brewers are clean and ready to go. Like, I kind of do need a shovel. The measuring cup, shovel of the kitchen. Okay, this is gonna take me a second. Shake it very gently, even everything out. Now, to follow instructions for this one, because we don't have kind of this rainfall situation we've got on the OXO brewer, I'm gonna pour in my first 32 ounces of water. I'm gonna give this a stir, make sure everything is fully saturated, and then we'll top it off with our last 8 ounces. Already just reaching in there, you can feel kind of where those clumps of dry coffee are, so just very gently make sure everything is mixed in. This is not for whisking, this is not for like pushing coffee through, this is simply to make sure everything is gonna extract evenly. Okay, last 8 ounces. That goes nicely right up to the top. Quick stir, we should be good to go. One thing I will mention that this brewer lacks over the OXO one is we don't have any like measurements for how much water to add. Now, we don't have measurements directly on this one either, but we do have a nice carafe that has measurements. So if you are not someone who wants to like weigh out your water, or if you don't have another carafe that has measurements, you might be kind of figuring out in some other way how much water you need to add. Just something to keep in mind, it's a little less straightforward. All right, we'll set you to the side. We'll come back to you in a second. I don't know if I mentioned this, it has a very nice grabbable handle that I like quite a bit. Now, first things first, before you do anything else on your OXO brewer, make sure that switch is up. If it's not and you pour water in here, you are going to have a disaster. I say not from experience, question mark. Now, as I mentioned before, and as I showed you, I already have a paper filter up in here. I'm gonna use our kitchen shovel to once more shovel in 250 grams of coarsely ground coffee. This one's a little less shovel-like, just because it has a really wide opening here. Give it a shake, and let's get some water. Again, as a reminder, use your handy markers on your carafe. And because we have this rainfall head, kind of like the mellow drip, but for cold brew. All right, that's 32, we need 8 more. All right, now in theory, we don't need to do anything with this. This does not recommend any stirring to happen. We'll just wait for those grounds to fully saturate down through the entire bed of coffee, which you can see on the side that it's already doing. Now for both of these, we're gonna be brewing at room temperature. So I'm just gonna set them on the kitchen counter and let them brew together side by side. The range for cold brew is very wide. Some people like doing 12-hour cold brew, some people like doing 8, some like doing 24. I usually find somewhere in the middle is like a good place to start. There's no real right or wrong answer, it's very much up to preference. So for the sake of consistency across both of these, we're gonna let these both brew for about 16 hours in total. A little bit more than 12, a little bit less than 24. So I'll see you in 16 hours. Bye everyone. Good morning, everyone. It is now the following day. We have been brewing for a good amount of time. Time to break into these, time to taste them, then we'll evaluate. Now I think, just go with the smaller one. We'll start with the KitchenAid. We'll work our way back to the OXO Brewer, which means I'm gonna very carefully move this back this way. You can just live there for the time being. Now, just looking at the brewer itself, you can start to see there are some fines, a little bit of like sediment that's kind of built up around the edges of the internal brewer. That's not super surprising to me. That usually happens when there's any sort of like metal filtering involved. However, my question is if there's like a secondary filter that occurs from the point where the coffee drains out of the main carafe through the spout. On the OXO Brewer, we had a very, very clear, like disposable paper filter. So we know there's secondary filtration there. We don't really know about it here, because if those don't get filtered out, we may get left with a little bit of a muddy glass of cold brew. But let's find out. Now, this has a nice handle, so you can very easily remove all your grounds. And I'm realizing that I need to get by the sink very quickly to do this. So maybe we put them back in for a second. And we scoot over here, and now we lift. It's just a order of operations thing. Now, it's just a reminder, what we are brewing today in both of these devices is concentrate. So we're gonna be diluting this 1 to 2 with water. So 1 part cold brew concentrate, 2 parts water. It's a pretty standard dilution. Again, you can always adjust that depending on your preferences. Concentrate is really nice because it's super versatile. You can use it as kind of like a cold base for like cold coffee drinks if you don't wanna be making espresso constantly. You can also really easily like vary it to your own preferences. So if you have 2 different people drinking coffee and you both like different like dilutions of cold brew, super easy to do. This is how most cafes brew their cold brew as well. We got a scale, so we do this somewhat accurately. Let us rotate here so we can use our spout. I love a good spout. That was right on with 100 grams of cold brew. That was not intentional, but maybe I'll pretend it was. Sometimes I surprise even myself. 1 to 2, we have 100 grams of cold brew. We're gonna add 200 grams of water. Got some cold brew here. We're gonna set it to the side. We'll add ice and sip it once we have everything ready side by side. Now with this brewer, if you'll remember, we aren't gonna be storing it in this container. Once we're done brewing, this is done with. We instead have this carafe we're gonna drain everything into. And then we have a nice little cap where you can cap this off and stick this in the fridge if you want. Gonna line this up under here. That looks good. Make sure we don't have spillage. And then, okay, this is gonna take some time. You know, I have brewed so much toddy cold brew in my time in cafes, and I always expect it to be this like gushing, like just drop of cold brew concentrate. It's going through a lot of filtering right now. First of all, we have this like entire bed of coffee the water has to fall through, but also we have a filter in there, and so just let it drip, let it settle, we'll be good to go. This is just me very impatiently waiting for my cold brew to drain. Although it's been pretty consistent, pretty fast. We're probably about 4, maybe 5 minutes in at this point. I think, frankly, we are pretty close to being done. Very exciting. I'll be back soon. It's been about 7 minutes. We have gone down to like a very slow drip, so I'm gonna call that done. Let's get this cold brew portioned out. And now you get to go back on the corner over here. Okie dokie. 100 grams of this. Pretty close. Nothing's gonna beat my like true 100 grams that I nailed on the very first one. And then 200 of water. So, they certainly look different. Let's grab some ice, let's do some tasting. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it as clearly on camera, but visually these 2 cups of coffee do look different. You can already tell that one of them, this one right here, is gonna be a good deal cleaner in like kind of the texture and the mouthfeel than this one is. But let's try. We'll start over on this side. Ooh, you can see evidence of my spill underneath. This one right here is gonna be the KitchenAid cold brewer. telling you, you put good coffee in, you get good cold brew out. Also, I don't know if you can see it, our cats have like a little drinking cup on the edge of the sink, which surprisingly keeps them from going into the sink, which we don't want them to do. So there's Mitzi there if y'all needed a cat cameo. This is actually a really nice cup of cold brew. You know, I can tell just cause like I kind of knew it would be there, that there's a little bit of like suspended fines happening still in here. Like they're not totally filtered out. However, I don't think it's noticeable to really anyone else. If I was served this in a cafe, I really don't think it would stand out to me. I think just because we're like looking for the best here, I'm very aware of it, but it's not like a big deal. The flavors are nice, they're complex, everything just, it's like a good cup of cold brew. I don't have much more to say about it. Okay, let's move over to this one. Again, we're using the exact same coffee and ratio in both of these. So, we have the OXO. That's good. I'm a big fan of cold brew. I like that flavor profile a lot. This is a really nice cup of cold brew. Now, while this one was still a nice cup of cold brew, the one downside is that it did have a little bit more softness, I think, in the tactile. Like it's just kind of like, it's a little bit more velvety, but not necessarily in a good way. And that velvetyness comes from the fact that there are still some like fines and a little bit more particulate in there than there is in here. This right here is a very clean cup of coffee. The tactile, the flavor, everything is just pretty spot on here. I'm gonna drink the rest of that today. So now that we've tasted, we can compare and contrast these a little bit better. The first thing we have to talk about, of course, on our grading metrics is it a nice cup of coffee? So again, the first metric we're looking at when evaluating these two is it a nice cup of coffee? Both of these, frankly, brew pretty nice cups of coffee. However, I do think there is one that is better. That's gonna be the OXO here. Having that paper filter in there, having the ability to do kind of a second filter through everything really enhances the mouthfeel of the cup, which was a very coffee person sentence to say. However, it is a noticeable difference. You know, I do like both of these cups of coffee, but I do like this one more. And you know, I was looking around, I was thinking maybe there's a way to insert like a paper filter or something into this one. And because of the fact that the bottom and like all the internals and everything with the tubing here is pretty much completely closed off. It's really hard to get in there and there's no real obvious spot where one could put a filter. If you're drinking this and you want a really clean cup of coffee, I might suggest you do just like a secondary filtration outside of this, like set up a little like, I don't know, like a little Kalita or something with a coffee filter in it and just run your cold brew through that quickly. Now our second metric was the build. Is this easy to use? Does it feel good? Is it easy to clean? Like how does it function? There's a pretty clear difference in the materials used in these two. This one is pretty much entirely glass and stainless steel. It feels very hefty. Frankly, it feels expensive. It's nice to use. I like the spout. I like most things about it. This one, again, is all hard plastic. With that, even though it is maybe a less quality material in how it feels, there's a lot of advantages to this because with this, you can much more easily wash it. You can like stick stuff in the dishwasher. You can like rinse real fast. This one is a lot more solid in that it's a unit and it's harder to clean things in it. Some things about this that I really like is that it's all contained just in here. There's no like extra pieces really. It's got a handle. It's supposed to sit in your fridge and then you can just dispense out, concentrate whenever you like. That's really convenient to me and I think frankly, it just looks nice in the fridge. I think that's something that a lot of people will like. This one is for sure a lot more of a bulky item. This one's gonna take up a good footprint in your kitchen. Now you brew this on your countertop. You don't need to put this in your fridge if you don't want to. But if you want to, this is gonna be a tricky one to fit in there. It is very tall, it's very bulky, and there's no real way to like deconstruct it really. Now the last thing we're comparing and contrasting, the price point. And again, this one is about twice as much as this one. This KitchenAid brewer sits at about $110, whereas this OXO one sits at about $50. And I guess the final question is what do we rank them? And also, which one do I like more? Now, last week we have a brewer that I rated 6, and now that we have a metric to rate things against, I'm gonna go back and reevaluate that a little bit. I wanna bump that brewer down to maybe a 5. It's closer to a 4 than it is a 6. And with that said, I want to place this one at a 7. This is a really nice brewer. It brews a nice cup of coffee. There are definitely some ways that it could be better. I wish it was a little bit less expensive, but for what it is and how it looks, I think it's a pretty good option. That being said, I think this is a better option. I want to give this like an 8.5. Maybe that seems high, but frankly, as far as the actual cup of coffee goes, I don't think much you could do better. This tastes really, really delicious. It's very easy to clean. I think the primary downside is that it has a pretty big footprint in your kitchen, so just the size of it. But beyond that, It's a really solid cold brewer. I think that's where we're gonna sit. This is gonna be a 7, it's gonna be an 8.5, and I will say, I think I prefer the OXO. We have many more methods of cold brewing to investigate. These two put us on a really good track, I think, so I'm excited to see what comes next. If you all have any ways that you like cold brewing or you want me to try, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Now, as usual, I am Morgan Drinks Coffee. You can find me here on YouTube once a week, plus shorts. Additionally, you can find me on TikTok or Instagram almost every single day. I'm gonna fish out my favorite cup of cold brew. I'm gonna go enjoy this, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.